hunt for Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 was the biggest and most expensive search in history, but ultimately it's been a failure. And a senior official who was part of the search has told Sky News in a new investigation he knew early on that they were looking in the wrong place.
We covered that area in such a level of detail that I just don't think it's plausible that we missed the aircraft.
Were you looking in the right area?
Well, initially in the southern Indian Ocean, no.
And tomorrow night, Peter Stefanovic will bring you a groundbreaking documentary into MH370, 10 years on from its mysterious disappearance. It will be on in this time slot, 7:30 p.m. tomorrow night for an hour, and Peter Stefanovic joins me now. Pete, congrats on your documentary. It's incredible. Look, you actually interviewed some of the families of those who are still missing. They still don't have answers. What do they think happened?
They're actually keeping an open mind, Shari. Good evening to you. I asked them, I interviewed them a couple of years ago for a previous documentary, and I asked them then if they were willing to point the finger at the pilot, Captain Zahari Shah, and they told me years ago that they weren't going to do that just yet because they didn't have all the facts. So this time around, I've interviewed them again to see if they've changed their mind, and they haven't. They're still willing to give the pilot the benefit of the doubt until they've got everything squared away. This is despite the fact that most of the evidence, if not all of it, suggests that this was mass murder-suicide by the pilot. They're still not willing to go there yet, and it just helps them in their grieving process. So, whatever works for people, that's fine, but that's just how they're viewing things, and that view has not changed.
In terms of the actual search location, there's been a lot of different theories about where the plane could be. You think in this day and age it wouldn't be that hard to track down an entire plane and all the parts that go with it. Why has it been so difficult with all our modern technology to try and work out exactly where that plane would have disappeared and which part of the ocean it would have sunk?
There's a few ways to answer that. The first one is that, you're in the southern Indian Ocean. It's a place called the Roaring Forties. It is inhospitable. It is a very violent ocean, and the crafts, the vessels that were there looking for it originally had to deal with all of that. I mean, we're talking about big swell, and you've got the craft that had to go into areas that are very dark, very cold, very wild. So that in itself was very difficult. But probably the toughest break, I think, the Australian searchers had was that they started days after this plane had actually gone down. Because remember, they were looking in the South China Sea first. That's when the pilot turned off the transponder. So the assumption was that the plane had just gone down in the South China Sea. This is not long after takeoff from Kuala Lumpur. But it took a week, and that was through the help of satellites, that they realised, well, actually, no, the plane's gone down way over there. So by that time, 7 days had passed, you got a lot of debris. The debris field would have spread out in different areas, and it was just very difficult to track. And so that's why, by some benefit, I suppose, can be given to the ATSB, even though most people we've spoken to suggested that they got it wrong. They got the search zone wrong. You played a clip of Peter Waring there. He had suggested that they were looking in the wrong area, but they had blinkers on. They weren't going to change their view because they were working on the assumption that it was a death dive, that the plane ran out of fuel, the pilot wasn't in control at the end, and it just corkscrewed down into the ocean. But what they didn't factor in was the fact that the pilot was alive, and he wanted to glide that plane as far as possible so that it wouldn't be found. And in that instance, he has been incredibly successful.
It's one of the greatest mysteries of our time. Peter Stefanovic, again, well done, and I'm sure everyone's looking forward to seeing it tomorrow night. So MH370 documentary tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. right here on Sky News.